The stage lights went dark. Michael Jackson stood frozen. His hand wouldn't stop shaking. In exactly 10 minutes, 3 men would walk through that door and destroy everything he'd ever built. And the worst part, he already knew they were coming. Bangkok, 1993. 50,000 people had just watched him moonwalk across the stage. They'd screamed his name until their voices cracked. They'd cried when he sang "Heal the World." They believed in him, trusted him, loved him. But love doesn't stop lies. And lies were already spreading faster than any hit song he'd ever released. Michael stared at his reflection in the dressing room mirror. The face looking back had performed for presidents, broken every record, changed music forever. That same face was about to become the most controversial image on the planet. "Michael?" His security chief's voice came through the door. Urgent, afraid. He didn't answer. He couldn't, because answering meant facing what came next. The knock came again, harder. "Michael, the lawyers are here. They said it's." The door opened before he could respond. 3 men in black suits stepped inside. Behind them, his manager was pacing, phone pressed to his ear, face white as paper. Michael had seen that expression before, the night his hair caught fire during the Pepsi commercial. The day his father told him they were taking the Jackson 5 away from Motown. Terror, pure terror. "Mr. Jackson," the lead attorney said, closing the door with a click that sounded like a gunshot. "We have a serious problem." Michael's legs felt weak. He gripped the edge of the makeup counter. What kind of problem? But he already knew. He'd felt it building for weeks. Whispers, rumors, strange phone calls, people asking questions about his ranch, about the children who visited, about his friendships. "Allegations," the attorney said. "A family is accusing you of." He paused, choosing words carefully. "Inappropriate conduct with their son." The room tilted. Michael sat down hard in the chair. "That's not true. That's not. I would never." "I believe you," the attorney interrupted. "But that won't matter. The media has the story. It breaks tomorrow morning. We have 6 hours to respond. 6 hours, 360 minutes, and every single one of them would feel like drowning." But what Michael didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. The attorney pulled out a folder, thick, official, terrifying. "They want $14 million. They say if you pay, they'll drop everything. If you don't, if I pay, everyone thinks I'm guilty," Michael whispered. His voice, the voice that had sung to billions, sounded broken, small. "If I fight, it destroys everything. My music, my message, every child who ever believed I cared about them." It was the perfect trap, the kind designed by someone who understood exactly how to break Michael Jackson. The second attorney spoke up. "You need to understand the reality here. The moment this story breaks, you become guilty in the court of public opinion. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters what people believe." Michael stood up, walked to the window. Outside, his fans were still dancing in the streets, still singing Black or White, still celebrating the concert they'd just witnessed. They had no idea their hero was falling apart 20 floors above them. "I need to call my mother," he said quietly. "No." The lead attorney's voice was firm. "Not yet. Not until we have a strategy. Every call you make from this moment forward will be scrutinized. Every word you say will be twisted." Michael turned around. "So I'm already guilty? I haven't done anything, but I'm already in prison?" Nobody answered, because the answer was yes. The attorneys left 30 minutes later, promising to return before dawn with options. Michael stood alone in the dressing room, surrounded by flowers from fans, awards from the show, pictures of children he'd helped through his Heal the World Foundation, children he'd never be able to help again without people questioning his motives. The silence was suffocating, more painful than any sound. This was the loneliness he'd always feared, being completely alone despite being the most famous person on earth. His hands were still shaking. He looked down at them, these hands that had created the moonwalk, that had written Billie Jean, that had held hands with sick children in hospitals around the world. Were these the hands of a monster? Is that what the world would believe? Then something happened that changed everything. The phone rang. Michael stared at it. Every instinct told him not to answer. It could be press, it could be someone recording, it could be another nightmare adding to the one already crushing him. But something, maybe desperation, maybe hope, made him pick up. "Michael, it's Elizabeth." Elizabeth Taylor, his friend, one of the few people who truly understood what it meant to be famous, to be judged, to be hunted by cameras and lies. "Liz, his voice broke completely. "I don't know what to do." "I know, darling. I already heard. Listen to me very carefully." Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Are you innocent?" "Yes. God, yes. I would never." "Then here's what you're going to do. You're going to fight. Not because you'll win, the game is rigged against people like us. You're going to fight because surrendering means accepting their lie. And if you accept it, you die. Not physically, but the part of you that matters, that dies. Michael closed his eyes. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you're still human, but don't let fear make decisions. Your truth makes decisions. What if my truth isn't enough? There was a long pause. When Elizabeth spoke again, her voice was softer. Then you learn to live with being misunderstood. It's the price of being different, Michael. You've been different your whole life. This is just another chapter. They talked for an hour. She told him about her own scandals, her own battles with public perception, her own moments of wanting to give up. And slowly, something shifted in Michael. Not confidence, not certainty, but resolve. When he hung up, the sun was starting to rise over Bangkok. Golden light spilled across the city, across the fans still lingering outside, across a world that would wake up in a few hours to headlines that would define the rest of his life. Michael made his decision. He walked to the piano in the corner of his suite. His fingers found the keys, and he began to play. The melody that came out was haunting, beautiful, infinitely sad. Words formed in his mind, lyrics about betrayal, about innocence lost, about the space between who you are and who people think you are. This song would never be released. Too raw, too honest, too painful. But it needed to exist because music was the only place where truth still lived, where judgment couldn't reach, where Michael Jackson could be completely himself. By the time the attorneys returned at 6 a.m., he was ready. I won't pay, he said simply. I'll fight, whatever it costs. The lead attorney nodded slowly. Then we prepare for war. And Michael, this will be the hardest thing you've ever done. He was right, but he had no idea how right. What happened over the next few hours would test everything Michael believed about justice, truth, and human nature. The press conference was scheduled for noon. 4 hours to prepare a statement, to craft words that would either save him or condemn him, to find a way to prove innocence when innocence can't be proven, only believed. Michael's manager kept insisting he cancel his remaining tour dates. Disappear. Hide. Let this blow over, he said. But Michael knew better. Hiding looks like guilt. Silence sounds like admission. I have 3 more shows scheduled, Michael said, his voice steady now. I'm completely serious. Those people bought tickets to see me. They believe in me. I won't abandon them. His manager stared at him like he'd gone insane. Maybe he had. Or maybe for the first time in years of being controlled by schedules and handlers and expectations, Michael was making a decision based on his own moral compass. The lawyers worked frantically, drafting statements, preparing responses, building a defense against an accusation that hadn't even been formally filed yet. Because that's how modern destruction works. The accusation is the punishment. The trial is just theater. Michael sat quietly, watching them work. He thought about his childhood, about his father Joseph's brutal rehearsals, about performing at 5 years old when other kids were playing with toys, about never having privacy, never having normal, never having peace. He'd survived all of that. He'd survived the pressure of being the most famous child in the world, of carrying his entire family financially, of being simultaneously adored and exploited. Could he survive this? At 11:30 a.m., they drove to the press venue. The streets were lined with fans holding signs. Some said, "We love you, Michael." Others said things too cruel to repeat. The divide had already begun. Inside the conference hall, reporters packed every seat, cameras from every major network in the world. This wasn't just news, this was a spectacle, and Michael was the main attraction in the worst possible way. 5 minutes, someone said. Michael closed his eyes, breathed, tried to find the calm he always found before stepping on stage. But this wasn't a performance, this was survival. Michael, his assistant touched his arm gently. There's something you need to see. She led him to a side door, opened it slightly. In the hallway, a group of children stood quietly. They were from the orphanage he'd visited 2 days earlier, the one where he'd spent hours playing with kids, reading to them, promising to help fund their education. They were holding a banner, simple, powerful, devastating. "We believe in you, Michael." His eyes filled with tears. He couldn't help it. These children, who had nothing, who had been abandoned by everyone, were giving him everything, their trust. "How did they get here?" he asked. "They walked," his assistant said quietly. 3 miles. They wanted you to know you're not alone." Michael walked over to them, knelt down, looked at each small face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for believing." A little girl stepped forward, maybe 6 years old. She handed him something, a drawing she'd made. It showed Michael on stage, surrounded by hearts, with words at the bottom. "You teached us love." The grammar was wrong, the spelling was off, but the message was perfect. Michael stood up, straightened his jacket, wiped his eyes. "I'm ready," he said. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he actually meant it. But what happened next would shock everyone watching. Michael walked into that conference room like he was walking onto a stage. Head high, eyes forward, every bit of the king of pop that the world knew. The camera flashes were blinding, a wall of light, 1,000 eyes, a million future headlines. He approached the microphone. The room fell completely silent. Even the reporters, usually shouting questions over each other, seemed to sense this moment was different. Michael looked directly into the cameras, into the living rooms of millions of people, into the eyes of everyone who would judge him. "I stand before you today," he began, his voice quiet but steady, "not as a celebrity, not as the king of pop, but as a human being who has been accused of something so terrible, so opposite to everything I am, that I can barely speak the words." He paused. The silence was absolute. "I have dedicated my entire life to children, to helping them, protecting them, giving them hope when they have none. My Heal the World Foundation has helped millions of sick and suffering children around the globe. I've brought joy to kids who had nothing to smile about, and now someone is trying to turn that love into something ugly." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. "I have never and would never harm a child. I say this not because I have to, but because it is the absolute truth that lives in my soul. I am not perfect. I have made mistakes. But this accusation, it is a lie." The reporters started shouting questions immediately. Michael held up his hand. "I will not pay money to make this disappear, because paying money says I did something wrong, and I didn't. So I will fight, I will clear my name, and I will continue to love and protect children, because that is who I am, that is who I have always been." He stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted into chaos, questions flying like bullets, cameras flashing like lightning, but Michael just walked away, head high, heart pounding, knowing he'd done the only thing he could do, tell the truth and hope it was enough. It wasn't. What followed over the next weeks and months would break most people. The media coverage was relentless. Every tabloid, every news show, every talk show, Michael's face was everywhere, but always next to headlines that made him sound guilty before any evidence was even presented. His album sales dropped. Radio stations stopped playing his music. Parents started viewing him with suspicion. Everything he'd built over 3 decades started crumbling. The worst part? The kids. Children he'd helped began being questioned by their parents. "Did Michael ever do anything inappropriate to you?" Sick children in hospitals were asked by doctors if they felt unsafe around him. The orphanage visits stopped because administrators feared the association. His mission to help children, his entire purpose, was being destroyed by the very accusation that he'd hurt them. Michael barely slept, barely ate. He'd walk through his Neverland ranch at night, past the empty amusement park rides he'd built for sick children to enjoy, past the zoo he'd created to bring joy, past everything that now seemed like evidence of something sinister instead of something beautiful. "Why?" he asked his sister Janet one night on the phone. "Why would someone do this?" "Money," she said simply. "They know you'll pay anything to make it stop. They're counting on it. But I won't. I can't. Because if I do, you admit guilt. I know. And I'm proud of you for standing your ground. But Michael, this is going to get worse before it gets better." She was right. The family making the accusations hired a high-profile attorney. They went on TV. They told their story with tears and dramatic pauses. And the world ate it up because scandal sells better than truth. Michael watched it happen in real time. Watched his reputation get shredded. Watched people he thought were friends distance themselves. Watched opportunities vanish. But something unexpected began happening too. Letters started arriving at Neverland. Thousands of them. From fans, yes, but also from other celebrities who'd been falsely accused, from lawyers who'd seen this pattern before, from child advocacy experts who knew Michael's actual work and character. One letter stood out. It was from a teenager named Marcus, who Michael had helped years earlier. Marcus had been dying of cancer. Michael had visited him in the hospital repeatedly, paid for experimental treatments, stayed with him through surgeries. The letter said, "You saved my life. You gave me hope when I had none. You are the kindest person I've ever met. Don't let them take that away from you. Don't let them make you stop caring." Michael kept that letter in his pocket, read it when the darkness felt too heavy. The investigation dragged on. Months turned into a year. The media stayed hungry. The accusers stayed loud. And Michael stayed silent, letting his lawyers handle the legal battle while he tried to hold on to his sanity. Then came the breaking point. One night in December, Michael collapsed. The stress, the insomnia, the constant anxiety. His body finally gave out. He woke up in a hospital bed, hooked to machines, with his mother Catherine sitting beside him holding his hand. "Baby," she said softly, tears in her eyes. "You can't keep doing this to yourself. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. "If I stop fighting, I lose. If I keep fighting, I'm destroying myself." "What do I do, Mother?" Katherine Jackson, who'd watched her son become the biggest star on earth, who'd seen him work harder than anyone should ever have to work, who'd protected him from his father's abuse as much as she could, looked at him with such profound sadness. "You survive," she said. "You put one foot in front of the other. You remember why you started making music in the first place, and you hold on to that when everything else is trying to pull you down. What if I can't? You can, because you're my son, and we don't quit." It was the simplest advice, but it was enough. Michael spent 2 weeks in that hospital, resting, thinking, deciding who he wanted to be on the other side of this nightmare. When he was released, he made a choice that surprised everyone. He announced a settlement, not an admission of guilt. The legal documents made that clear, but a financial settlement to end the civil case. The family accepted. The accusations stopped. The media declared him guilty by settlement. Michael knew that's what would happen. He knew people would say, if he was innocent, why did he pay? But here's what they didn't understand. Michael was exhausted. The fight was killing him, and he'd realized something important. He couldn't win. The system wasn't designed to prove innocence. It was designed to punish the accused regardless of truth. So he chose survival over vindication. It was the hardest decision of his life. It felt like losing. It felt like betraying himself. But it also felt like the only way to have any chance of getting his life back. The settlement was reached in January 19. By February, something started to shift. Michael returned to the studio, started writing again, started creating. The music that came out of this period was different, darker, angrier, more raw than anything he'd done before. "They Don't Care About Us" became an anthem of defiance. "Scream with Janet" was pure rage and frustration. "Stranger in Moscow" captured the isolation and alienation he felt. The History album wasn't just music, it was his response to everything. His truth, told through melody and rhythm and lyrics that cut deep. The public reception was mixed. Some people heard the pain and understood. Others said he was playing victim. But the music was brilliant. Everyone agreed on that. Because even damaged, even accused, even hurting, Michael Jackson was still a genius. He performed, he toured, he created. Because that's what survivors do. They keep going. But the accusations had changed him fundamentally. He became more paranoid, more isolated, more suspicious of people's motives. Every new friend might be looking for a payout. Every interaction could be twisted into something ugly. Neverland, once a place of joy, became a fortress. The amusement park rides stopped running. The zoo animals were eventually relocated. The children's visits ended. Michael Jackson had built a paradise for healing, and it had become evidence in his own trial by public opinion. The years that followed brought more challenges, more accusations, more media scrutiny, more bizarre headlines. But Michael kept creating, kept performing, kept trying to share his message of love and healing, even when the world seemed determined to see him as broken. By 2009, he was planning his comeback. The This Is It tour would be his grand return. 50 shows at London's O2 Arena. Every ticket sold out in hours. The world, it seemed, was ready to forgive or forget, or at least enjoy the music again. Michael threw himself into rehearsals. He was older now, 50 years old, body worn down by decades of intense performances and stress. But the magic was still there. The moonwalk still defied gravity. The voice still soared. "This is my final statement to the world," he told his dancers. "This is my chance to show them who I really am. Not the headlines, not the accusations, just the music and the love." The rehearsals were incredible. Anyone who watched knew they were witnessing something special. Michael Jackson, after everything, was still the king of pop. He was meticulous about every detail. The lighting had to be perfect. The choreography had to be flawless. Every moment needed to be unforgettable. "Why do you work so hard?" a dancer asked him one night. "You've already proven everything." Michael smiled, a sad smile that carried decades of pain. "Because the music is the only place where I'm understood. On stage, nobody questions my intentions. They just feel what I feel. That's all I've ever wanted." But fate had one more cruel twist waiting. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson died suddenly in his Los Angeles home. Cardiac arrest. He was 50 years old. The This Is It tour would never happen. The final statement would never be made. The world stopped. Within hours, the news spread globally. Radio stations immediately began playing his music non-stop. Fans gathered outside his home, outside the hospital, in cities around the world. Everyone was crying. Suddenly, all anyone could remember was the music, the moonwalk, the magic, the joy he'd brought to billions of people. The accusations? Still there, still debated, but overshadowed by the recognition of what had been lost. Michael Jackson, flawed, complicated, misunderstood, was gone, and the world was grieving, Not just for the artist, but for the man who'd spent his entire life trying to spread love while being treated with suspicion. His memorial service was watched by billions. Celebrities spoke about his kindness. Musicians performed his songs, and everyone, finally, seemed to understand what they'd taken for granted. In death, Michael Jackson received the understanding he desperately sought in life. But here's the tragedy nobody talks about. Michael died still trying to prove himself, still working to show the world his truth, still believing that if he just performed well enough, loved hard enough, gave enough, people would finally see him clearly. He died without vindication, without the universal belief in his innocence that he'd fought for, without the peace he deserved. His children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, were left without a father. The world was left without its most talented entertainer, and millions of children who'd benefited from his charity work lost their biggest advocate. The years since his death have brought some clarity. Documentaries have examined the accusations more carefully. Legal experts have pointed out inconsistencies in the accuser's stories. People who knew Michael have spoken about his genuine love for children and his childlike innocence. But the debate continues, because that's how these things work. Accusations stick forever, even when unproven. Mud thrown in anger never completely washes off. Michael's legacy remains complicated. His music streams billions of times. His dance moves are still imitated. His influence on pop culture is undeniable. But his name will forever be tied to controversy. And maybe that's the real lesson of Michael Jackson's life. Fame doesn't protect you. Talent doesn't save you. Being kind doesn't mean people will be kind to you. And sometimes, the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. Michael taught the world to moonwalk, but he also taught us something more important, that we need to be more careful about who we destroy with accusations, more thoughtful about believing the worst of people, more aware that celebrities are humans who hurt and bleed and break just like everyone else. His final message, the one he never got to fully deliver, was simple. Love is the answer, healing is possible, and children, all children, deserve protection, care, and the chance to believe in magic. Michael Jackson lived that message, even when it cost him everything. Today his music still plays. Children still dance to Thriller. Artists still cite him as their biggest influence. And somewhere in that catalog of brilliant work, in those moonwalks that defied physics, in those notes that hit impossible heights, the real Michael Jackson still lives. Not the headlines, not the accusations, not the tabloid version. Just the boy from Gary, Indiana, who loved music so much that he gave his entire life to it, who suffered more than most people ever will, who tried to heal the world even when the world was trying to break him. That's who Michael Jackson was, and that's who deserves to be remembered.